So I'm here with Adam Kitchen, and Adam runs an email marketing agency called Magnet Monster in the UK. Adam and I met about 4 years ago. I think it was 4 years in a Klaviyo conference in London. Since then, we've kept in touch. We've shared a lot. He's helped me with my agency, and I've helped him with various things. We've just shared a lot of what we've seen working with our own clients in the D2C e-commerce space. So very excited to talk to Adam today, and let's see if we can get some nuggets out of this conversation. So Adam, welcome.
Cheers, mate. Great to be here. And yeah, it's funny looking back now. What was it, nearly 3 years ago? And I was just in the beginning, and I was the one hounding you with questions relentlessly all the time to catch up to you. And hopefully now I can reciprocate that and provide some value to you and how to grow your agency. So yeah, I'm excited to talk
Was it
about
only
email.
was it only 3 years? Yeah,
I know it's crazy when life is normal.
it's felt longer than that. Of course, we can write off the last year because that just flew by. But cool. All right, so let's get into some questions. And the first question I have for you is probably the biggest question, and that is your philosophy on email for D2C e-commerce brands. What is it?
My philosophy on email is no different than what I think the whole marketing strategy should be for the brand itself, and that's to continuously provide as many positive interactions while staying top of mind as possible without annoying the customer or negatively affecting their perception of the brand. So that's very hard to achieve on email without having a lot of data. And how you might think, how do you even start to quantify something like that? It's very difficult. But ultimately, I find the best way to think about this is to just put yourself in the consumer's shoes and think every time you send an email out, does this add to the customer experience or detract from it? Is this within the customer's best interests, or is it within the brand's best interests? And I find just shifting your approach and taking this really basic high level overview is enough to make a massive difference to the performance of email as a whole and stop a lot of the bad practices the brands are doing. So at its core, it's about adding value to the customer. And I know that sounds a little bit fluffy. A lot of people say, oh, what do you mean by add value? Everybody says that. But it's about maximizing the positive interactions compared to the negative. At the end of the day, it's e-commerce. Everybody needs to sell. I understand that. But there is ways to sell that don't involve harassing people, coercing them, manipulating them, bombarding them and harassing them. You can sell to people if you stay top of mind in a positive frame. And in fact, you don't even need to sell. It becomes much easier to sell. So when we're working with brands, that's the high level overview of what we're trying to achieve, maximizing positive interactions. And how do you do that? Well, that's a huge topic within itself.
Yeah, before we get into how, if we ever get time for that, maybe I can get some examples from you on what would a negative experience be.
Negative experience would be somebody who hasn't bought within a period of time and just thinking the only reason they haven't purchased was because the price was the only consideration. So you just start going deeper and deeper and deeper with offers. And it's this type of like harassment and constant relentless bombardment that usually causes people to churn most quickly. And I think when I say positive interactions, you're looking at trying to prolong that customer experience on email. If someone unsubscribes, they're gone. Like you've generally lost them on email, and it's such a cost efficient, profitable channel. So harassing people, bombarding them, using basically the same strategies that everyone else does when it comes to pricing is what I would constitute as a negative experience on a very high level.
Yeah. When the frequency is too high, for example, could just be another example of a negative experience. And of course, finding that frequency is different for each brand. Um, cool.
I would just want to add to that as well. I would say, and this is probably going a bit deeper and we'll get into this, but treating email as a one-way channel where you're speaking down to the customer rather than with them Many people forget that email is an engagement channel, but because it's being so siloed and focused on just sending offers, that they forget to engage with the customers. And when you think about it, the action of opening an email is actually like quite personal and intimate to the customer. So they're generally opening an email with the intention of viewing the content or responding. That's what, email was generally designed for. So I think if you're constantly delivering messages that just speak down to people, then you're going to condition people to not want to engage with them. So again, I would class that as a negative interaction if it's all one way and not two way.
So treating email, at least some of the emails that a brand might send, as a two-way conversation as opposed to a one-way conversation. Yeah, I know you have some campaigns that you do for clients on that. Maybe we can get into that in a bit if we have time. But so I think looking at just to sort of quantify what a positive experience is. I mean, adding value, it is a bit ephemeral to say that, but to actually put it into practice is well, it's night and day difference, versus hounding customers with direct response sale type campaigns relentlessly without any value add content. But maybe we can quantify what that is from a sort of a numbers or metrics standpoint. I think looking at it this way might be helpful. If we look at it like we're optimizing for engagement rather than optimizing for revenue. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's a pie in the sky type of way of looking at it, like airy fairy, or does it make sense that when you're optimizing for engagement and still thinking about revenue, but not putting it above engagement as an important factor? Do you think there's any merit in thinking like that?
Absolutely. I think revenue is something that just comes naturally with engagement over time. You can't force someone to buy. I was having this conversation earlier on. Like, it's very, very difficult to think you can force somebody to buy. Generally, people are going to buy when they want to buy or they have a need for it. They're not going to buy if you start to increase the frequency and just go deeper and deeper and deeper. Like, there has to be a need or a want for the product. And generally speaking, if you just pigeonholing price as the only consideration, then you've already lost because you're on a race to the bottom. So I think ultimately, let's go back to the question again. How did you frame it? Sorry.
So the metric of optimizing for engagement as opposed to optimizing for revenue.
Yeah. Okay. So this is just to go a step back, like you said. I think marketers are very good at looking at like the positive engagement signals or the metrics that they want to look good, for example, revenue, but they never pay attention to the negative ones. So if you start to hit someone with an offer or trick them into opening an email, and then you go, oh, look, this email drove $10,000 of revenue. But what was the cost of that? How many people have been deconditioned to open the emails? How many of them just know that they're going to be hit with the same thing over and over again? How many unsubscribed? How many reports it as spam? Nobody ever really pays attention to these metrics because they don't reflect positively on the marketer. They only look at the things that put them in a good light. And when you reverse frame it, like you said, and you start to look at, is the customer continuously, the volume of total recipients opening it going up? Is the average open rate going up? Click rate depends on, the objective of the email. Then usually what you'll find is marked over a period of time without tons of offers. And obviously this is contextual and dependent on the brand. The revenue is generally not dissimilar. It's not as though, tons of offers and sales related content made a huge difference. So knowing that people are more likely to churn when you hit them like relentlessly with a high frequency, that's why I said that the concept or the overriding goal should be to prolong that engagement over a period of time rather than looking for quick wins on an email by email basis.
I agree completely. But I think it's very difficult to switch your mindset away from looking at the revenue as the goal of any campaign. Because these metrics they're I wouldn't say they're hidden, but they're not obvious. Because if we're talking about Klaviyo, which 90% of e-commerce brands that at least that we interact with are on Klaviyo, The metrics that they're showing front and center are revenue metrics. I mean, it's open and click rate also if you're looking at the campaigns page, but everyone is looking at the revenue metric on a campaign by campaign basis. So they don't actually make it super obvious to be looking at the engagement as a you know as a mix of metrics that you should be focused on. But
This is just want to touch on this.
Mhm.
This is a huge problem with all of these email service providers, and they really need to change course, in my opinion, on how they're demonstrating the value of the platforms. For example, if you start to send someone to a survey, for example, or you deliver a content related email teaching them how to use the product, that isn't necessarily going to directly cause a jump in revenue, but it's providing a positive customer experience. Now, if you go into the benchmarks of reporting for Klaviyo, for example, your revenue per recipient will go down, and then they'll categorize you as a bad job compared to
Mhm.
people in your cohort or competitors, which is just nonsense, really. So it's conditioning someone to only follow one type of practice in email, and it really needs to change. We need to start looking at the metrics in a different context.
Definitely. Yeah, I posted about this the other day actually, and somebody who's a strong proponent of this is Chad White, the godfather of email. So he consistently talks about looking at the subscriber metrics as opposed to campaign metrics. You know, looking at that lifetime value of a subscriber, looking at their
Yeah.
engagement over a certain period of time, because that is looking at it from a long-term perspective, which is what you should be looking at it from, unless you're a drop shipper and you're optimizing for the first sale only. So yeah, I mean, looking at it from a campaign metric perspective, as you say, can tell you, well, it can basically, it's a lie basically if you're just judging the performance based on those metrics, because if it's a campaign that is a value add campaign, let's say it's a campaign that is informing the customer about, we have just improved our shipping, our courier, right? So our shipping method is now twice as fast, and it's going to be now tracked. So you're going to know every step of the way where your order is. Maybe with that brand, there was a problem in the past where they had a ton of problems, a ton of issues with the courier they were using, and a lot of customers were unhappy. So that is not necessarily going to drive a lot of sales, especially if it's a subscription product company that no one's going to order directly from that email. But what it is it's going to uh, cause a realization to happen in the customer where, oh, okay, so if I continue with this company, it means I'm going to get my product faster and it's going to be more reliably shipped to me. So therefore, I'm probably going to extend my subscription by another month or two or three or whatever it is. So the result of that one campaign is that the lifetime value of that customer has increased slightly on average, right? On aggregate, it is increased, but you're never going to know that by looking at the campaign
Yeah.
metrics. The only way to determine that sort of a lift, and this is a very sort of narrow, extreme example, because what usually happens is it's more an aggregate over several emails. So the last 25 campaigns that a customer or a subscriber has received will influence their future behavior. So if the last 25 campaigns have been sale, sale, buy now, buy now, buy now, expiring, oh, sale extended, sale, another sale, extended, extended, versus just educational content and not forcing anyone to buy, and maybe the occasional sale just to speed up that revenue collection, speed up the sales cycle, that's going to have a bigger difference to the future decisions that subscriber will make after those 25 emails have all been sent, right? Of course, I mean, for illustrative purposes, it happens in a much more messier way. But if you can imagine that after sending those 25 campaigns with either of those scenarios, the metrics are going to tell you that the first scenario of sale, sale, sale is going to perform better than the second scenario of adding consistent value. However, if you look at the long term, what happens after those 25 campaigns? Well, it's pretty obvious that the group that receives the educational campaigns are going to retain for longer, and they're going to be more likely to purchase from that brand.
Yeah, 100% agree. God, this is a massive topic. Ultimately, I think brands only think there's two levers you can pull. It's either increase the frequency on email or increase the amounts of the offer, like the deeper the discount. And it's sad to see if people don't get the type of revenue response they want on an email by email basis, they just start to up the frequency or increase the level of the discount. And we've worked with someone quite recently. They were in a bad habit of, well, I say bad habits, it depends if you think resends are a valid technique. And the owner said to me, well, when we send the resends a day later, it generates this much in revenue. And I told him to stop doing the resends for a month. And the revenue stayed exactly the same. So it was just cannibalizing the revenue from the first email. And obviously, every time you send a resend, you're losing a ton of subscribers more. Your spam complaints are going up because people are just seeing exactly the same content. It's a more negative customer experience. And it's more manual workload for the company as well. So they're less profitable on email because they've got to recreate the campaigns. So this is all stems from thinking about what works best for the brand rather than the consumer. And this is why I think a lot of people get into trouble.
Yeah, definitely. That resend example is a great example because if you hadn't have tried that, it would have been obvious to the brand owner that by stopping resends, the revenue would go down, because the way that Klaviyo is tracking the revenue, it sort of implies that that revenue wasn't going to happen, right? So if a sale occurs and that subscriber or that customer has opened an email in the past 5 days, which is the default conversion window, it's going to get attributed to one email, to only one email. It's not going to be attributed to multiple emails and some sort of a blended distribution that would be pretty cool if it were possible. But it's only getting attributed to one email. So if it's a resend, it's going to get attributed to resend, right? Whereas, maybe they're going to buy anyway, or maybe, because maybe their product ran out of whatever replenishable it is, or maybe it was time for them to purchase again, or they were going to buy based on a previous campaign. Maybe it was a product launch, and they see that this product is now available, and they're going to purchase it. Just because you send a resend doesn't mean that caused the purchase. It was going to happen anyway. I mean, that's the thesis. That's the hypothesis, right?
Yeah. It's a complex topic. There's so many variables, and ultimately, I think you were telling me the other month about using the holdout tests. There's lots of things you have to test to make sure the hypothesis, even on our side, is correct. Because ultimately, some of this stuff people might perceive as fluffy. Well, I'm in e-commerce, I need to sell. Mm-hmm. So we need to prove our theories as well. And I think both of us, run the right tests to try and substantiate that.
I would love to talk about holdout testing, maybe in a future talk, because we're running some really interesting holdout tests right now based on frequency, comparing, let's say, 5 campaigns per month versus double that. And, the experiment is not done yet, so I don't want to talk about it too much, but I'm seeing something pretty interesting so far. And then another holdout test, which is even more interesting, which we do have statistical significance on, is basically the empirical evidence of how much revenue email actually is driving. So I'll leave that for another day, though, because I think it's a very complex topic. I think we'd have to devote at least the whole hour to talking about holdout testing only. Half of the people probably haven't even heard of holdout testing. I know I haven't. I hadn't heard of holdout testing until I started hearing it from Chad White. So, but I found it to be incredibly useful in the right circumstances to prove out certain hypotheses that we may have. I want to move on to... Sorry, say that again?
I'm looking forward to that case study on it.
Good stuff. Yeah, it's coming soon. I look forward to chatting through it with you, hopefully, and whoever else. So the next question I want to talk about is, or the next topic rather, is like how do you move away from using discounting? How does the brand move away from it? And I know we touched upon that by value add campaigns, and sort of educating and not going hard into pushing discounts and sales. But maybe we can talk about some practical examples of what would be a way or what would be multiple ways for a brand to move away from discounting as its primary strategy.
There's tons of ways. There's tons of ways, really. It never. It's a strange one, right? Because like when it comes to email, people think discounting and sales is the only strategy, but actually on all other marketing channels, whether it's social media, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, content on the websites, SEO, all other channels, podcasts, they put a level of thought and attentiveness into what is good for the customer and what benefits their experience. But it's like when it comes to email, it's just, emails to just send offers on. And they don't give it any creativity or thought like the other channels. So I think on a very high level, you can start there, like start to look at what are you doing creatively on the other channels and why aren't you doing it on email? Because this is another way you can leverage email as opposed to just sending offers. How do you get someone to move away from discounting as a core strategy? So I think explaining that to them on a high level is one way to go about it. If a brand is a heavy discounter, it can be very hard to get them to change course. Like we're dealing with at the moment. We have a couple of people that we work with. Ultimately, as a service provider or a marketer, sometimes you can't change the whole company culture. There's so many other facets of play that you might not be able to influence. So you need mental buy-in from the brand as well. You need someone who wants to work with you, who says, we only discount on email, we only send offers, we want to move away from it. If you don't, then you can't change. You can lead the horse to water, but if it won't drink, then you're not going to.
So I guess the problem there is that once you get the buy-in, you also have to get sort of the understanding or communicate the understanding that the revenue is going to drop. I mean, you're going to see a massive drop in sales based on the fact that you're not pushing those discount offers, right? So I don't know if you've seen this or if you've moved brands away from
where it becomes a little bit gray, because obviously you need a time frame as well, right? It's like you cannot say, okay, we're going to move away from discounts and then after 1 week panic and go, we need to send an offer out. Like there's no point to even consider it. You have to look at things over a period of time, and you can't just look at gross revenue. You need to look at profitability, lifetime value, obviously, and this is stuff that you can't really measure on like a weekly or daily basis. It needs to be something on a long term you look at the trajectory of in the business. So it's a brand, it starts at a brand level wanting to move away from it. That's very important, and that can be very, very difficult as well, because customers do become conditioned to only buy an offer. Seeing it even with tons of companies we work with, they message the customer service and say, when are you going to give us a coupon? And it's like, we're not going to give you a coupon anymore until maybe Black Friday. Oh, okay. But the problem is people are waiting for the offers now. So someone might have bought at full price before, but now they're specifically waiting for offers. So that's cannibalizing your profits in the business.
So what you really need is commitment to see it through. Because there's going to be a period of time where it's going to be painful and the brand is going to see a dip in sales. I mean, profit's going to go up, but there's not going to be a corollary revenue. Or I mean, maybe there will be. It depends on the brand, I guess. Depends on how heavy that discounting strategy was. But like what I see would happen with the extreme example of a brand that, and I think you and I both know the brand we're talking about, the big UK brand that was heavy discounting. I think probably still is. Tons and tons of customers, but if they were to move away from that strategy completely, would you recommend a sort of a gradual decline, or what are your thoughts on that? Would you just go cold turkey and take them off discounting altogether, because they're going to have to see it through. They're going to have to see that period through of drastically reduced sales, at least for a period of time, before it recovers.
You know what, Rod? It's easy for us to say, just from a like email perspective, don't do this. But I think we're probably almost being a bit naive and like how this is part of, you know, entrenched in the whole company culture and that specific business. I think we're mentally like aligned in that our philosophy is to not use email for this way, but there's a lot of other factors at play for a lot of businesses. That being said, let's say like it's a small to medium sized brand, right, who specifically says to us in the beginning, we want to move away from this. In my opinion, yeah, go cold turkey. You're either going to do it or you're not. And the brands that we've worked with, we've actually sent out owners from the CEO or the director saying, we're going to stop the
message from owners.
Yep. Right. Yep. Email from the owners, say, you know, look, just being completely transparent and honest with the customers. We know we've gave away tons of discounts. Ultimately, it's been bad for our business. We are not as profitable doing this, and we stand behind the quality of the products and we believe in the value of them. We understand, you know, it might upset a few people, you're used to it, but this is ultimately what we need to do to provide a great level of service. Very, very simple. And it's truthful as well. It's truthful for a lot of them. And you'll be surprised how overwhelmingly positive the reactions are from the customers. And at the end of the day, the customers that are going to be turned off from this are usually the lowest value ones and in the market for a race to the bottom. So if you've got a brand that you value quality in your product, they're probably not a good customer for you anyway. Like, these people are better suited to like a mass marketplace and the cheapest commoditized goods. And, you know, maybe you are a brand like that, in which case, you know, that's a completely separate discussion. But if you are a brand who genuinely pride yourself on quality and your USP, then you've got the luxury, in my opinion, of commanding a higher price point and not engaged in this strategy.
Yeah, I agree. Over the long term, they're gonna see a huge difference anyway, because like as you described it, as a small to medium brand, I think margins are incredibly important. I mean, just for any company really, and even a 10% or 20% increase in margin is going to make a huge difference for a lot of businesses.
One of the first brands we worked with when we started the agency, and I was actually doing the copywriting for them, was a sports nutrition brand, and the revenue was sort of between £30,000 to £50,000 a month, and they were never a discount brand, never. But over the last couple of years, they started to just engage in discounting because they just did. They needed sales at the time, or like, you know, they were pressured into it, and they just thought they'd start to run offers intermittently. When we came back in, they made it clear to us actually in the beginning, like, we want to move away from that. We want to get back to our core. We were always about, like, you know, we produce the best quality products, supplements before. But we're worried, you know, we've been sending these offers out for quite a while now. Like, people are going to just leave us and go, And we sent this basically email from the owner saying that we're going to stop the offers. You know, we want to get back to our core principles of value, the unique selling proposition. And the revenue stayed the same. It didn't go down or it didn't go up, but the profit margin, because they weren't selling at like 20 to 25% off all the time, it saved the business. It did go out of business eventually, but at the time it did save the business for another year. Other things led to the demise I'm not going to get into. That's another story for another day. But just by increasing, they kept the revenue the same, but the profitability of the company went up, you know, significantly, and that was enough to keep them in business for another year.
Very cool. Do you think there's a place for discounting? Because, you know, there's a couple of people in the industry that say every 6 weeks you should do a sale, and whether that sale is 5% off site wide, 10%, 15, 20%, depending on margins or depending on, you know, what you're comfortable with. Do you think there's still a place for occasional sales?
It depends on the brand, absolutely. I'm not saying that you can't run offers or sales. Definitely not. You know, we use them in certain flows, sales now and again. But when it's the only strategy, that's when it's a problem. If that's the only thing you've got to say. when can you use discounts? I think on the first purchase, it's quite well established to de-risk it and also generate the leads, and enhance the conversion rates. No problem. I think it's fairly obvious, that it works. In a win-back flow, like deeper down, most people, when they create, email automation win-back flows, they go straight into a discount ladder and assume that's the only reason. When we generally create them, we actually go in with like a conversational approach, and then like try and like reassert, the brand's values. And if there's no response to that, then yeah, fair enough, we might do a discount ladder. But generally speaking, it might just be like 10% off for 48 hours. Again, it depends on the brand. So I think they're like the two core cases where you can use a discount. And also general, like, Black Friday, whatever, Christmas sales, when you need to clear inventory, that's a factor for a big brand as well, right? Like sometimes it's not a sake of branding or maintaining like high value. It's that you need to like shift inventory very fast and nobody wants it, but they might buy it if it's on like a big offer, mainly for fashion brands. So they're like the primary use cases I see for it. But again, it depends on the brand. I think every 6 to 8 weeks is a bit over the top, to be honest, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, just on the shifting stock purpose, you probably want to add some sort of a disclaimer to that so that you're not devaluing the brand, right? Devaluing the products. So, this is last season's stock. For that reason, there's a significant discount, or these products will expire soon, and for that reason, there's a discount. Because if you're giving discounts for no reason, customers are going to think, well, okay, why would I purchase at full margin then? They probably wouldn't use the word margin though. So I want to, ask, get some ideas from you, because I know you have some killer ideas on campaigns that drive engagement. So pretty much what we've been talking about here, campaigns that are not designed to sell explicitly, but campaigns that are designed to drive engagement, to add value, and to enhance the level of engagement within email.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got a lot of ideas, actually writing an article on this at the moment. Well, I'll cover them at like a very high level so we don't go super deep into each one. First one is we do a lot of competitions, not just generalized giveaways. Like we try and tie them into brand education. So as an example, we're working with an oral care brand at the moment, and basically we'll do like a series of emails, product education, and the customer has to answer a quiz at the end of them and respond either to the email or go to a typed form or something like this. So we're conditioning the customer to not just skim the emails but actually consume the content, and then we're following up, like announcing the winners within the email itself. That's a great one. Like if you're having deliverability problems as well, I think this is like an incredible way to start to condition customers to open and engage with the emails. We're doing these literally once a month. Like the effects have been that strong on the brands that we've worked with.
Are you varying the content each time, or is it sort of very similar stuff each month?
Yeah, just trying to be as creative as possible. Keep varying it up, definitely. Like sometimes the competition, the actual giveaway can be very similar, but it like definitely make the questions and like the theme. It depends as well. How this brand, we're talking a lot about sustainability, the quality of the products, like tying it into how that like it impacts the customer. So you got to find like if you sell skincare, for example, like you could talk about how the products are organic. You've got to like tie it into some type of theme to the brands and the products, in my opinion, rather than just a generalized, oh, we're giving away this, just respond to the email, because that's really served the brands well.
Yeah, it's like, hey, we've got a giveaway for an iPad. I mean, if it's not tied to the brand, it's very disconnected, and it's not going to build that engagement that you're looking for. They're going to be engaged, but it's only going to be because of the iPad, not because of the brand and and what they believe in.
Exactly. Second one is content distribution. So there's nothing like no rocket science involved here. people create like blogs, videos, tutorials, and they disseminate them across social media, but they forget that email can be used for content distribution as well. This is a just seems to be like a lost art. I don't know why people don't do this. Even if somebody buys a product, why not show them a tutorial video of how to use it? Huge click-through rate, content people actually want to receive, creates positive experience over email. Lots of opportunities here to distribute content. Surveys,
Yeah,
qualitative research.
maybe
You
we
want to
could
go into
maybe we
again?
could
Yeah.
stay on that one then, actually, because that's kind of interesting, and I've experienced the same as you. Um, a lot of e-commerce companies, basically, well, a lot of companies in general, they have blogs, and many companies have blogs that are kind of an afterthought, that are not marketed heavily or distributed heavily. So I would imagine the consumer rate on those articles are, honestly just almost nothing. Um, the formatting on a lot of blog posts that I see is actually very poor. So anytime I see that, I think, well, no one's going to read that because it's painful to your eyes to actually scroll through, and there's no formatting, there's no illustration. So I I think what we've done working with several brands is to take their blog posts that are poorly formatted, and I don't think they're getting consumed, just looking at Google Analytics and the stats, the read times, and creating emails from those content pieces. And it's basically it's the same content, but it's packaging them up into a distribution form that's going to get consumed, because it's not about creating the content, it's about getting the content consumed. So yeah, I don't know if we want to go deeper into that, but I just wanted to reaffirm that, yeah, repackaging content
Yeah.
can just make all the difference. And actually, let me get your thoughts on this then. And this may change with iOS 15, but
This is exactly
you,
what I
you,
was going to talk
you
about
know
now.
what I'm going to say, right? So it's do we deliver the content in the email, or do we link out externally? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, this is something I would have said before, like deliver. Obviously, it depends, right? Like if it's like a 5,000 word blog post, you cannot really deliver this in an email. So obviously, you would want to link directly to the site and give a teaser. I think it's a real tricky one, and there's a lot of variables. But I think now I would be inclined to say, like, try to deliver the traffic to the website, unless you are absolutely sure that the customer is engaged, because ultimately I think you're probably going to need to get those clicks quite high for your own segmentation. And I know this is sort of contradicting what I said before about what serves the brand best versus the consumer, but ultimately, like, we need to look after our deliverability, and one way of doing that will be to measure clicks, um, and make sure that we're not email or engage people. So again, I think it depends on the context, but I would be inclined to say, like, send them to the website.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think Chad White actually had a post about this very recently, about how mailbox providers are breaking that trust with subscribers, or how Apple is rather, by implementing the iOS 15 changes by withholding the open rate metric. Basically, they're breaking the trust, or causing the mailbox providers to break trust, because they're supposed to be delivering an exceptional experience, or a very positive experience, to their email users, but they're not able to do that if brands don't know who's engaged and who's not engaged.
Yeah.
Because if a subscriber becomes unengaged, then a brand who's doing email right is going to suppress that subscriber, or reduce the frequency, so that at least they're not emailing them so often. So without that knowledge, yeah, we may have to implement certain practices like this. But at the end of the day, I don't think there's a contradiction. You're still doing it in the interest of the subscriber, because ultimately, you're optimizing for their experience, and driving clicks to the website with the goal of understanding what the engagement level is going to help you know if you should be emailing the subscriber or not. Having said that, though, it's still, click-through rates are very low in comparison to open rates. So I still think we'll have a problem on our hands if the mailbox providers don't change the way that um, they set their algorithm, their filtering mechanisms. So I think I'm going to hold out for hope here. I think probably they will adjust somehow, because it just won't make sense otherwise. Like if email marketers are not going to be provided with that data, they're going to have to respond in some way. We're not all going to be globally penalized because we don't have that metric. That's my opinion anyway. And when it comes to like content, delivering content in the email versus the website, if we're not talking about iOS 15, we're just talking about experience. I think delivering it in email is probably the best way to do it for two reasons. Well, there's a caveat here. I think within an email is going to be a better experience for subscribers because it's reducing the friction to consume that content.
Yeah.
The second reason is due to company resources. So if you want to send that subscriber off their email program, and on mobile it's even worse because they know that it takes a couple of seconds to load up the web page and switch the app. If you're asking the subscriber to do that, then their experience is not as good. There's more friction, but also the resources involved in creating a visually appealing and well-formatted landing page are not there for a lot of e-commerce brands, especially the ones that are sub 2 million or even all the way to 10 million. I mean, it depends on the size of the team, really. But I just see in my experience working with a lot of brands at that size, they really don't have the capacity to create landing pages on the fly for regular content campaigns, especially if you're doing like one or two per week. There isn't the resources. So what we found as a workaround is to basically deliver that content in an email, and that's really the best of both worlds in my experience. The downside, of course, is you lose any nuance. So the content that you're delivering can't be complex content. If it's again with skincare, if it's something where you're giving a routine that's going to work for the changing seasons and dry skin and how you might expect that, and here's how to remedy it, and here's a suggested routine, I think that can be delivered in email. We've done stuff like that. But if you're talking about more complex issues like resveratrol, and you're going like the ingredient and you're going through that and educating on that, and it's a very complex topic, I think you can still do that in email, but you're limited, because if you have like a web page or a landing page to deliver that content, you can go much more in depth. It's sort of like a LinkedIn post versus a blog post. It's like you're very limited with your LinkedIn post, especially before they increase the character count limit to 3,000. You really have limited real estate to deliver on that content, which could be a good thing. Because especially, nowadays with the attention span getting lower and lower, maybe consumers don't want to be consuming, 3,000 word blog posts, and maybe the only way to deliver that content is through a bite-sized form via email.
Yeah, I love your perspective on that, and I think you delivered it. You're very articulate with it. I agree with you. I think if you can't deliver the value within the email, then ultimately it's about eliminating friction. So deliver the value there. Again, if you're forcibly trying to direct someone to the website, then that's in the brand's interests and not the consumers. And, what are you going to get from that? A browsing session. Yes. So what? Like if they were going to browse the website and buy something, they were going to do it anyway. They didn't need to be forced to click through. Like you're going to get such a very small effect, I think, from forcing that will be outweighed by the fact that, as you said, you could have delivered the value in the email itself.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So any other campaigns, or you want to move on? Any other ideas you have for engagement campaigns?
Loads. Surveys, qualitative research, so sending people to type forms, trying to get the customers even to submit more UGC. Like we've created blog posts and emails repurposing images the customers have submitted, like about their experience with the products or just personal stories related to them. For example, one of the brands we work with deals with hyperhidrosis, which is excessive sweating, and we sent surveys to people, like asking them, what does it mean to you to like get your confidence back, like overcoming hyperhidrosis? And people submitted like some incredible responses, like went really deep, and this can create like blog posts and be repurposed in future emails, which we did and shared this story. And it was super well received. Like so many people actually wrote in to the brands and said like, oh, this gave me a lot of confidence. Like I didn't know anyone was like me, and it was really nice. Um,
Sort of build a
so yeah,
community, right? That community
build a
feel.
community over email as well. Yeah, build the community.
Do you think it's possible to build a community over email? I mean, I think there's some maybe some definition of words here we might want to get into because community is like I suppose you imagine like a chat room or a Facebook group or a Slack workspace. I mean, you got people interacting with each other, so that's a community. I don't know. Do you look at email in a similar way, or there's a distinction there between building a community versus building a relationship with the subscriber?
Yeah, I think ultimately community, isn't it, is about like openness and inclusiveness of everyone. I think it's quite difficult to do because email is a personal channel. It's quite intimate between you and the subscriber, so it can be an extension of your community. But I think it's hard to say that email, like you've built a community over email. You can build engagement with subscribers over email, whether that is classed as a community. Just get into semantics, really, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's actually one campaign idea that I might give you, which is if the brand has a Facebook group or a community, you can talk about that within emails and sort of, as you say, talk about the community in the email. So the email is not really the community itself, but that's something that I've seen work with brands really well. Is when they actually dedicate a certain percentage of the resources into creating a community, like whether that's a Facebook group. I think for B2C, D2C, what I've seen work is obviously the most obvious is Facebook groups. I don't think many D2C will be using Slack as a community platform. But just seeing certain brands use a Facebook group as a way to build that community as an extension of whatever engagement they have on social and email. It's sort of like an added level of engagement because community, I mean, it's going to attract your most loyal customers and they're going to be evangelists and they're going to multiply whatever marketing you're doing. I mean, maybe not multiply, but they're going to be acting as little salespeople by referring your company to their friends and such and shouting about it on social media. So yeah, I think just as an aside, if we're talking about things other than email, I think that building a community is a great thing that a brand can do if it has the resources to dedicate to it.
Absolutely critical, and it's a content factory because all these people posting topics, like they're giving you so much research for free as well. So much, great quality UGC, qualitative research. They're telling you what content you should create. And then they're creating a community, like you said, of brand advocates on autopilot. So I actually think community it's been a bit of a buzzword, but ultimately creating like a real community attached to the brand will be a core differentiator in the future because so many consumer goods are becoming commoditized. So ultimately you will have to create these distinctive assets to stand out from the competition. And if someone can buy the same deodorant everywhere else, then what benefit does your brand have? Great service, yeah, a little bit, but community, that's very hard for any brand to replicate and disrupt the market.
Yeah, because the community, well, it basically adds to the feeling that you have about that brand, and that's ultimately what's going to distinguish your brand from another brand. It's the feeling that the customer has of buying your brand versus another. Like I buy Mac products because I'm a fanboy, and I didn't used to be a MacBook fanboy. Maybe in the future I'll cease to be one, but for now I'm still a fanboy. And I could get a Dell XPS and it'd be like even better specs than the MacBook Pro I have right now. But I don't get the same feeling about buying that I would about buying a MacBook. It's really, there's nothing logical because you can make an argument for the user experience on a PC now that's just the same as a Mac. It's just as easy to use. It's just as fast and reliable, maybe even more so, right? So it's more about the feeling that I have about the brand and the products rather than any objective measure.
You know what I think would be very interesting software if you could incentivize people to become part of a community and then reward them in some way. I don't know, with credit towards future purchases or something, but you're almost like stimulating conversation within a private group or forum, and then you're rewarding the customer for participating in that. Have you ever
Mm.
seen any type of software?
You mean like a loyalty program, like classic?
Yeah, but a little bit deeper because like the loyalty programs are just like, oh, like us on Facebook and Instagram, and we'll give you 10, 25 points. What
Mm.
about like participate, start a conversation, and you get like credit towards future purchases or swag or gift sets, or you'll get a free consultation if it's a skincare brand or oral care, something, a little bit deeper. Ultimately, yes, you're trying to like increase the CLV and enhance loyalty, but something that like encourages them to build that community for you.
So the what are you optimizing for here? Are you optimizing for building the community or for customer lifetime value?
But I think they go hands in hand, don't they? They're intrinsically linked. If you do build a strong community, then stands to reason that the lifetime value is going to go up.
And do you think incentivizing somebody to build that community will be the same as if they were to naturally go about it?
Probably not, but I don't know. This is just an idea that's popped in my
Mm.
head for a second. So
It's an interest. It's an interesting idea because, and I'd like to see more about it because I'm not convinced about loyalty programs. I mean, I've read some research on it that, well, really the jury is out for me. I'm not sure if loyalty programs actually do drive lifetime value because all the stats that you see from loyalty program apps are basically proving a correlation, but they're not proving causation. So you see your high level segment of customers as driving 50% of the entire store revenue. Okay, sure, but was that because of the loyalty program or was that because that segment naturally existed anyway
Yeah,
because due to the Pareto principle and all that? I mean, it's a naturally occurring phenomenon that there's going to be a small percentage of customers that drive at least 50% or more of the revenue. So I don't know. I'm not convinced that loyalty programs actually do um, contribute toward an enhanced lifetime value. However, if you're optimizing for community, then I think there is a case to be made for it potentially at least entertain the idea of. And it's an interesting idea because I do see. Let's just assume that the concept does work and does have merit. Yeah, I think you wrote about this recently on a LinkedIn comment that there's a lot of staleness in the loyalty program apps, and the gamification that exists is very basic. It's subscribe to our email list, get 50 points, like our post, get 50 points. There's nothing like create an engaging Facebook post or submit. Record a video of yourself reviewing this particular product. I mean, I think there's some of that, but it doesn't really go in depth. And I think there's definitely a lot more that a brand could do if they did have such a program in place. I think there are programs like Sephora that do these things really well, and they offer other perks, like as opposed to the incentivization gamification. They do offer perks that go above and beyond the standard default perks that you see when you open up what is a smiley and you see the rewards that are $5 off, $10 off, $20 off. They do offer like exclusive events, invitations. Even something I thought was pretty cool was I don't know if it was Sephora, some other brand. It's giving insight and input on future product development, right? So if you're like in the top tier of this loyalty program and you're one of 100 customers out of 100,000 customers in the world, right? You're going to feel a certain level of exclusivity because you're one of the chosen ones that are responsible for directing the future of this company, even if it's in a very small way. And maybe the company directors won't even entertain the suggestion you have, but at least you feel as if you have some sort of control That's exclusivity, and that's going to drive a lot of loyalty. Now, if you were that customer anyway, were you going to be like purchasing the same amount of products? Maybe you were, right? So maybe it's a lot of gamification, a lot of like perk giving for nothing. I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah, I think it lies outside both of our expertise, but I think one thing we both can agree on, and that seems to be ubiquitously known, is that the current loyalty programs are pretty bland, and I don't think they add a ton of value to the customers the way most people run them. And it's definitely ripe to be shook up, that industry.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. So I know we're probably running pretty close to time now, but do you want to quickly go through the rest of the ideas? Because I know you're itching to reel off the rest of those campaign ideas that you have.
Yeah, I would say they were the main three. So competitions, content distribution, surveys, then repurposing those stories, qualitative research, type form, type submissions. And we run tons of these, and then we do try and tie them into community as well, which we've covered. Product education, like basic nurturing, not necessarily selling, but talking about like the values of the product, like unique ingredients within them, stuff like this, not just pushing out an offer like this product is 20% off, but actually talking about what makes the product a good product. Use UGC, I think we've covered that already, like basically repurposing stuff from social media, from these type form submissions, and then distributing them over email. And then two-way conversations as well. So genuinely like trying to get customers to respond to emails, to have conversations at scale. If someone stopped buying from you, why have you stopped buying from us? If someone purchased something, like how was your experience? Do you want to have a chat about it? Let us know if there's anything we can do to help. And this can help with deliverability as well, because obviously we're getting people to respond to the emails. But again, this is one where I think you need the mental buy-in of the brand, because sometimes we've tried to do this with brands, and they've been like, whoa, wait there, the customers are going to start speaking to us. That's going to create a headache for customer service. But I think we're the same philosophy, where having those conversations at scale is not just going to improve the overall email experience, but ultimately I think the brand in the long run as well.
Yeah, I agree, and I think what gives us even more clarity as agency owners into this, because it's difficult for us to sometimes see a brand's backend. I mean, depending on the clients, they'll give us access to their support desk. It's preferable if we do have access to that, obviously, so that we can do customer research and we can see what's going on with customers. But with Klaviyo's SMS feature, they actually just bake that ability right into the feature set. So you send an SMS on behalf of a brand, as an agency owner, for example, where you and I would send out an SMS, and then we can actually monitor the replies. So the brand owner is not directly receiving SMS replies on their mobile phone. That would be a nightmare. But they get the replies into Klaviyo, so that whoever's got access to Klaviyo can see those replies, just like a support desk system. So it's been very interesting to see that the brands that we've been testing SMS with, who's responding and who's not, right? And for me, it's pretty painful to see when a brand is not responding to those SMS messages, because I think it's such a massive disconnect when you receive an SMS from a brand and it's like, hey, just wanted to let you know, upcoming product launch. This is what you've been waiting for. You told us you're interested. August 15th, save the date. And then they reply and they're like, oh, cool. How many colors is it coming in? And then radio silence, right? To me, that's the worst thing that a brand can do. I'd almost just like to see the brand do no SMS communication whatsoever if they're not going to reply to the customers. I think the same thing happens potentially with email and support desks, but probably to a lesser extent, because it's already been established that customer support lies within email. And it's quite new that SMS is this two-way communication platform channel. But I just hate to see that happening. I'm sure it's happening across thousands of Klaviyo accounts right now that are treating SMS as a one-way street and not as a two-way channel, just like email should be too.
It's a great opportunity for brands who want to stand out and do things differently and go the extra mile. Ultimately, I think we could probably finish on that. Actually, this brings us full circle back to the beginning of our opening conversation, which is what's wrong with email. Ultimately, it's became very one-way focused, and SMS as well, and it needs to become more two-way and put the customer first.
Definitely, definitely, yeah. I mean, I suppose I would just encourage brands to free up those resources and maybe don't look at email as an expense or SMS as an expense, but something that should grow variable to the revenue that a company is doing, and make sure that they're just directing enough resources to it so that it can drive that customer loyalty and engagement and lifetime value for years to come. All right, super. Thanks so much, Adam. That was great. Maybe our next talk will be on holdout testing or, God, I don't know, like with the many hundreds of topics we've talked about, you and I individually. I think it would be quite interesting to go live with them and share them publicly. So I look forward to that if you're up for it.
Perfect, mate. Yeah, I appreciate your time. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks a lot, Adam. Cheers. Talk soon.